Call this meeting to order. Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Barnett,
Here.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Here.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Here.
Commissioner Tully,
Here.
Commissioner Davenport,
Here.
Commissioner Sarver,
Here.
Commissioner Rowe.
Here. Welcome, everybody. Is there a motion to move to executive session?
Yes, Mayor Barnett, I move to convene in a closed session pursuant to Section 2C3 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act to consider the selection of a person to fill a public office for which the village council is given power to appoint under law or ordinance.
Second.
Any comments? Rosa, please call the roll.
Commissioner Tully,
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Rowe,
Aye.
Commissioner Sarver,
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Aye.
Mayor Barnett.
Aye, that motion passes unanimously. We are going to take a couple of minutes and convene in closed session. Good evening and welcome. See if we can avoid that the rest of the night. Thanks for your patience tonight. We were in closed session earlier. We had a little bit of other business to take care of, and we're going to have our regular meeting now. So I'm glad you guys all stuck around. As is our tradition, we'll begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you are following along on our agenda, we are on item 5 now. If you're here in council chambers, over to your right on those counters, there are copies of the agenda if you want to follow along further. And a special welcome to anyone watching at home as well. So item 5 is proclamations. This is an opportunity for the mayor to say a few words and try and highlight things that he thinks are important or that ought to be recognized or shine a light on important activities or people or goings on in our community. We have one this week. This has to do with Telecommunications Week. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services. And whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. Whereas public safety telecommunicators are often the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services. And the safety of our police officers and firefighters is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens. Whereas the DuPage Public Safety Communications Center, known as DUCOM, serves the public safety communication needs of the village of Downers Grove and surrounding communities. Whereas while enduring long shifts and handling frequent life and death emergencies, DUCOM dispatchers set high standards in performing their duties in a dedicated, diligent, professional, and compassionate manner. Whereas DUCOM dispatchers provide a critical communication link between the residents of Downers Grove and police, fire, and emergency medical service providers. Whereas DUCOM dispatchers efficiently coordinate emergency services to ensure the health and safety of our residents, visitors, and travelers in our cities, towns, and villages, and on our highways 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Whereas DUCOM dispatchers are rarely visible to the public while performing an exceptional service that deserves praise and recognition. Now therefore, I, Robert T. Barnett, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim the week of April 12th through 18th, 2026, as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in the Village of Downers Grove and commend the devotion, compassion, understanding, and professionalism of the DUCOM dispatchers, dated this 14th day of April 2026, Downers Grove, Illinois. It's a group of people that don't often get thought of when we think of first responders. They're a critical link in the whole equation, and they help us all immensely. Item 6, minutes of previous council meetings. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mayor Barnett, I move to approve the village council meeting minutes from April 7th, 2026, and the executive session meeting minutes for approval only from April 7th, 2026, as presented.
Second.
Any comments from the council? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Public comments. This is a portion of the meeting where we take public comments on items not on tonight's agenda. So for those who may be new tonight, give me just a minute to read a little bit of instruction. There are several opportunities for public comment during this meeting. The first, where we are right now, titled Public Comments, is for items not on tonight's agenda. There will be additional opportunities for public comments at each first reading and active agenda item. Please remember, council meetings are not open debates. This is a council meeting that is open to the public. It is not a meeting of the public. While we seldom, if ever, cut people off, we do expect that people will respect the time limit to allow everyone here this evening an opportunity to address the council. If you plan to speak, please keep the following in mind when you come to the podium. State your name for the record. Address your comments to me as chair of the meeting. Keep comments to 5 minutes or less. Avoid repeating what others have already said. It's okay to say you agree with the previous speaker. In fact, you'll probably hear us do the very same thing as we discuss. Please keep your comments to one visit to the podium per subject, and remember that comments are most effective when they focus on subjects within the scope of Downers Grove Village governance. So with that, we are on item 7 on our agenda, public comments. Are there any public comments for tonight that are not related to an agenda item?
Mayor, I have a suggestion. My husband and I today went over to the drop-off lot and picked up some wood chips, and they're available there for the public, and they're at no cost. And it's a nice way to get started in your spring gardening. But the hours are 7:30 to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday only, and that would make it very difficult for weekend gardeners to be able to take advantage. The sign at the outset says the lot is full, don't bring any more in, so there's plenty of supply. I'd suggest that you might think about taking a few Saturdays in the springtime, 1 or 2 all day, maybe a month of noon, 9 to noon, to let the general public have a little better access to those resources and support their spring gardening. So, thank you.
Thank you. Other comments on items not on tonight's agenda? Okay, we will continue. Item 8, the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Mayor Barnett, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That too passes unanimously. Item 9, our active agenda. This is the portion of the meeting where we take up items on which we plan to take action tonight. These are items we have talked about at least once before, sometimes multiple times before. Again, these are items we plan on taking action on this evening. Is there a motion approving the Fairview Avenue TIF district?
Mayor Barnett, I move to approve the Fairview Avenue Tax Increment Financing District Redevelopment Project Area Redevelopment Plan as presented.
Second.
Any audience comments or questions on this item? Council comments or questions? Martin?
Well, since we were called out for not saying anything last time, this item and the next couple items are very important to support the planned expansion and enhancement of the Fairview focus area. Think of what was done 20-some years ago to spark the revitalization of the downtown here. None of that would have happened, or certainly not have happened as well, without some of these economic development and planning tools having gone into place at first. So these are all steps that will help that vision become a realization sometime down the road. So you're not going to hear us talking a lot about the details of it, because these are necessary steps that one needs to take as a municipality in order to make those things happen. And we do so because we look forward to a bright future for the Fairview focus area that can include all sorts of really cool stuff, perhaps maybe even something a little bit different than what we've traditionally done in the downtown. So that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you, Martin. Any other comments? Rosa, please call the roll.
Mayor?
Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yell at me.
I'm not going to yell at you, so I've done that enough.
I'm used to it. I'm used to it.
I just want to add to that. I'm fully supportive of this district creation. I see it as a necessary step forward to bring the Fairview area into its own destination for the village. I think it's important to highlight the collaborative effort that got us here, specifically the Joint Review Board, which includes representatives from, I think, every overlapping taxing body, school districts, 5899, DuPage County, the township, the park district, the sanitary district. They all voted unanimously to recommend the advancement of this. I think that speaks volume to the level of partnership and shared vision among our residents' governmental partners. It is also worth noting that this did not happen overnight. I think the vision for the Fairview corridor was identified in our 2017 comprehensive plan and further developed for our 2025 guiding DG process. I think this is just a great example of long-term planning coming to fruition. Martin and Bob saw the value of that, as Martin pointed out, to the downtown area. And I'm looking forward to seeing that same effort and the fruits of that effort in the Fairview area. And tonight, I think we're taking the first step towards that. I think the Fairview corridor has tremendous potential. There's metro access, proximity to our downtown. The vision laid out in our comprehensive plan and guiding DG, this TIF gives us the tools to support pedestrian-friendly development, streetscape improvements, and the potentially attainable housing, all priorities that this council has identified. I'm excited to see this move forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chris. Anyone else? All right, Rosa, please call the roll.
Commissioner Tully,
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Rowe,
Aye.
Commissioner Sarver,
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Aye.
Mayor Barnett.
Aye, that passes unanimously. Is there a motion concerning designating the TIF district?
Yes, Mayor, I move to designate the Fairview Area Tax Incentive Financing District Redevelopment Project Area as such.
Second.
Audience comments or questions? Council comments or questions? Rosa, please call the roll.
Commissioner Tully,
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Rowe,
Aye.
Commissioner Sarver,
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Aye.
Mayor Barnett.
Aye, that passes unanimously as well. Is there a motion adopting the tax increment financing?
Indeed, there is a motion. I move to adopt the tax increment allocation financing for the Fairview Avenue Tax Increment Financing District Redevelopment Project Area.
Second.
Any audience comments or questions on this item? Council comments or questions? I just want to add one sort of piece of maybe clarity. A TIF district, which we've just gone through here and had quite a few meetings leading up to, is not in itself per se a redevelopment plan, is a financing tool. And so I heard they were going to do fill in the blank is probably not the case, or at least certainly way ahead in terms of timing. What this, we've used this on Ogden Avenue, and we've used it in our downtown area, most notably those two spots. And it allows for some partnership work to try and facilitate and stimulate redevelopment. But it does not designate a particular thing. Chris went through a good list of some of the things we might see. And there are certainly lots of opportunities we're all very excited about, but what they exactly are going to look like and where they might be is very much unknown right now. Rosa, please call the roll.
Commissioner Tully,
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Rowe,
Aye.
Commissioner Sarver,
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Aye.
Mayor Barnett.
Aye, that passes unanimously. Is there a motion concerning rezoning?
Yes, Mayor Barnett, I move to rezone certain property located at 4412 Cross Street as presented.
Second.
Audience comments or questions on this item? Council comments or questions? Rosa, please call the roll.
Commissioner Tully,
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Rowe,
Aye.
Commissioner Sarver,
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Aye.
Mayor Barnett.
Aye, that too passes unanimously. Is there a motion concerning a special use?
Yes, Mayor, I move to authorize a special use for 3250 Lacey Road to permit a college or university as presented.
Second.
Any audience comments or questions on this item? Council comments or questions? Chris?
Yeah, Mayor, I still remain supportive of the special use, but I just want to clarify a comment I made last week. I think I referenced this as the second location for the university, Grand Canyon University. I was mistaken. But Orbis Education, I think, who has partnered with them, has another location. They partner with different schools. And so the Loyola School was the one that I mistaken for Grand Canyon. But so while they do, Orbis has two locations in our community. This would be the first for GCU. So we welcome them both, and I look forward to supporting this and seeing Downers Grove. Glad they see it as an attractive location. for training, healthcare training. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Rosa, please call the roll.
Commissioner Tully,
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Rowe,
Aye.
Commissioner Sarver,
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Aye.
Mayor Burnett.
Aye, that motion passes unanimously. Is there a motion concerning a boundary line agreement?
Yes, there is. I move to authorize the execution of a boundary line agreement between the Village of Downers Grove and the Village of Woodridge as presented.
Second.
Any audience comments or questions on this item? Council comments or questions? Rosa, please call the roll.
Commissioner Tully,
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Rowe,
Aye.
Commissioner Sarver,
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Aye.
Mayor Burnett.
Aye, that passes unanimously. Is there a motion concerning an agreement with Landmark Contractors?
Mayor, I move to award a contract for the Downtown Business District Flexible Amenity Areas to a project to Landmark Contractors Incorporated in the amount of $3,608,881.40, which includes construction of 5 flexible amenity areas with shade structures. Base bid plus alternates 1, 2, and 3.
Second.
Any audience comments or questions on this item? Council comments or questions? Tammy?
Just for the record, I maintain my opposition, and I would have gone with option A. Oh, just for the record, I maintain my opposition, and I would go with the option A, I believe, that just provides for the base of the structures and would not provide for the encasement thereof.
Thank you. Any others? Leslie?
Yeah, I know we have heard kind of back and forth on this, and I still am supportive of having a shade structure. As Commissioner Davenport mentioned in the last in the last meeting, it provides some continuity, kind of an expectation that that is going to be a gathering area. And while I do understand that there has been some consideration that, you could potentially save money by having restaurants have umbrellas or different things, we're hoping that these shade structures and these flexible amenity areas will, live on for a long time. And so there is a high likelihood that, they'll live beyond potentially some of the businesses that we even have today as things evolve. So that is why I'm supporting it in its current format. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Martin?
Thank you, Mayor. Similar to Commissioner Sarver, I have not changed my mind from when we discussed this in first reading. I'm all for the flexible amenity spaces, and I'm all for constructing all 5 at once if we can. Thank you for doing that after July 4th, by the way. There's some very happy people. I think that's great, and I love the design and the location of the flexible amenity spaces. My problem, as I expressed earlier, is with the cost. We'd originally contemplated this being about $1.8 million in terms of what was in our budget. What's now on the table is double that. And that would be okay if I thought that the extra amount was necessary and was commensurate with the cost involved to achieve something above and beyond what it would be without it. I'm not convinced that's the case. I've heard even some mixed reviews from the businesses in downtown as to whether the shade structures are necessary for that price. And I completely agree with Commissioner Sadowski Fugit from last week that government should not always act like a business. In fact, it can't. But families have budgets too, and I guarantee you my family doesn't act like a business. But we have a budget, and we have to act within our means. And I fully appreciate my colleagues wanting to make this extra special. Don't get me wrong, but to me, it's just too much. I agree with Commissioner Sarver. I would have stuck with alternative 1, which would be the 5 flexible amenity spaces without the shade structures. And I do want to note that I'm glad to hear that at least if this does go forward, that there's more than 1 light bulb that's being replaced with renewable energy. I was glad to hear that because I was concerned that didn't really swing it for me. 4 is better than 1. But still, I think it's just too far for what we're getting. And I hope I'm proven wrong and that 15 years from now, everyone say it was the best thing we ever did. But for now, I'm still not going to support this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any others? Rob?
So I have decided, and I am supporting this. Last time we were up, I was back and forth with the same question with cost, and really I think it comes down to 2 big questions for me. Is one, I needed to take some time and remind myself how we got here on this whole project. And the real question is, do the residents want these structures? And how we got to this point was 2 years of planning with guiding DG, and this was one of the major projects that we wanted to do immediately. And the second question is whether this project is fiscally responsible to approve. And from our discussions, it sounds like the project's going to be, I mean, this one is over budget, and I don't think there's anything wrong with what the village said, predicted with the budget, because I think trying to plan a budget out for this project is, you might as well have a dartboard trying to figure out the cost for this very custom project. But the real question is this project fiscally responsible? Village staff has recommended approval for this project. We have the money in the capital funds. The way I think we should do this, if village staff is telling us that there are plenty of funds in the capital fund to do this project, we should be doing the project the right way. I mean, one of my favorite characters from TV told me not to half-ass two things and whole-ass one thing. So I plan on approving this and whole-assing the one thing.
Anyone else?
I don't know how. I want to follow that. So, well put. So I'm not going to restate all my comments I made last meeting. All that still stands. But just to say that, this isn't going to get cheaper to do. The cost of it is what it is. And I think we did a terrific job by going back out and asking for new responses on an RFP. It saved us $500,000 from what we were looking at before. So looking forward to see this go forward. And I'm very confident that 15 years from now, we will be looking back at this and going, I'm glad we did it. So thank you, Mayor.
Chris?
Thank you, Mayor. I too won't repeat everything I said last week, although there are some things I think worth mentioning. I think, first of all, that the shade structures, I don't view them as an add-on. I think they were core design elements from the get-go in the streetscapes plan. Our comprehensive plan called for these things, our active transportation plan, our environmental sustainability plan. Those plans are things that were derived from community input. And so, we're at a 2-year thought on this thing. This is not just something we decided to add curtains to the window. I think we're setting the example with the solar canopy. And yes, there's things we could do perhaps on existing structures. But since we're going to build this, let's build it right. I also feel very comfortable using Landmark, who happened to be the lowest bidder and has done great work for us in the past. I may take some flack for this last comment, but I think there is some perspective on how we think about capital investment that I think is important. On our consent agenda tonight, we had 2 fire apparatuses totaling nearly $3 million. We didn't have any discussion on that. Of course not. Fire safety, obviously, a core obligation of our commitment to public safety. But I think it's important to remember that investment in our community comes in many, many forms. And these amenity areas, I think, are investments in the economic engine to our downtown, generate sales tax, food and beverage, property tax revenue that funds everything else we do, including buying fire trucks. I think the work plan, when we adopted the plans, the budgets, I've always had a struggle with budgets in some of these plans just because they're a stamp in time and very hard to estimate. That's not a staff comment, that is just a comment on these types of things. So from my perspective, we have the funds and it's time to do that and do them all at once. So I look forward to supporting that and appreciate the comments from all of my council members tonight because I think there are some good points brought up on both sides. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other comments? Rosa, please call the roll.
Commissioner Sadowski Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Aye.
Commissioner Rowe,
Aye.
Commissioner Sarver,
Nay.
Commissioner Davenport,
Aye.
Commissioner Tully,
Nay.
Mayor Barnett.
Aye, that motion passes 5-2. That ends our active agenda. It takes us to our first reading portion of our agenda tonight. This is the portion of the meeting where we discuss items on which we do not plan to take formal action tonight. So these are items we have talked about at least once before, or not going to talk about, or not make any decisions on tonight. Some of these items have been talked about multiple times and will still be talked about multiple times. So please remember that too as you're listening. Tonight is not your last shot at this item. So with that, I'll hand it over to Village Manager Fieldman.
Thank you, Mayor Barnett. There are 3 items on tonight's first reading agenda. The first is consideration of an ordinance that would authorize an extension to a special use for the property at 1250 Ogden Avenue. And here to provide the details on this request is our Community Development Director, Stan Popovich.
Thank you, Manager Fieldman. Good evening, Mayor and council members. The property in question is on the north side of Ogden Avenue between Vennard and Saratoga. The property is outlined here in the purple. You can see it's a former medical building at this location. In March of last year, there was an approval for a proposed multi-tenant use building with a drive-through. The petitioner has been working diligently to bring this site plan to life and been working with IDOT to get the right permits, and we are almost there. But we wanted to request an extension as that special use is expiring shortly. So the petitioner's request is to extend the special use for 6 months. Per our zoning ordinance, they can request this twice, and we have seen this in a couple other instances recently as well with a special use extension requests. I'm happy to answer any questions that the mayor and council might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Any council comments or questions on this item?
This is first request?
Yes.
First request.
Thank you.
Mike?
No, I was just
Oh,
agreeing, first request.
audience comments or questions on this item? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next item is consideration of an ordinance providing for an amendment to a specific ordinance regarding our fiscal 25 budget. And I'm just going to stretch out that intro while Mike gets it going here. All right, so I'm here tonight to give you an update on the closeout of the fiscal year 25 budget that has a few amendments. We are currently closing out the FY25 budget and financials, and the auditors are on site and will be on site for the next couple weeks. I'll be sharing some of those estimated closeout numbers, and if you've been here before, this is the same closeout process that we use every year. Okay, where am I here? Here we go. All right, so I am going to just walk you through really quickly. The key takeaways tonight is we have all good news. We have strong revenue performance, which is better than the budget. Expenses were controlled, i.e. below budget, and that allows us to transfer funds to our health fund, which has been a strategically identified need over the past several long-range plans. Here's where the uniqueness comes in. A budget amendment is required because those transfers, once they come out of the general fund, are classified as expenses. So we will close fiscal year 2025 with revenues greater than expenses, and it'll leave our fund balance in our operating fund at the recommended level. There are amendments to our health fund, which had some challenges with expenses related to claims that were higher than expected. We have some good news in our sales tax rebate fund. We have a couple of rebate agreements with some of our large sales tax producers. They sold more items and generated more revenue than we anticipated, which means we had to give back a little bit more according to formulas in those agreements. So we need to do an amendment for that fund because that went a little bit over budget. And then our friends and partners at the library had a small budget amendment in their capital fund for some needed building improvements that went over by just a little bit. What we plan to do to close out the budget is actually take advantage of the fact that we had such great strong performance with $4 million better than budget in the general fund. We want to transfer $3 million of that to our health fund, which leaves $1 million in the general fund balance, contributing to that amount. And that will require a $3 million budget amendment to the general fund. We also need to do a budget amendment to our health fund, which, as I said earlier, is experiencing higher than anticipated claims, which is causing expenses to be over budget by just over $1 million. So we're looking for a $1.1 million budget amendment. And as I mentioned in the opener, the sales tax rebate fund needs a budget amendment of about $20,000 because that is also good news. And finally, that library capital replacement fund budget amendment is only $5,000, but we still have to do it, even though they did a great job of managing to their bottom line. Happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Thank you, Dave. Any council questions or comments on this?
I was just going to, I should have said it with the last item, but that was pretty routine request. This is a pretty routine process that we do every year. It's basically settling things up in order to abide by government accounting requirements, but as was stated in the headline, all good news. Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, and I support this, certainly. I think it's obviously the right thing to do, fairly routine. I'm not so sure it's all good news. I do have some concerns about our health fund. And I think it's the largest driver of this amendment, right, by far, which is our health insurance costs. We're a self-insured organization. And I talked about this, I think, the last time we did one of these. And I think it's just important that we are reminded as a council, and I'll get to my point at the end here. I've just taken a cursory look at the budget numbers over the last 4 years, really. And what I've noticed is what we budget versus what is actuals has been off by quite a bit the last 3 years for sure. And this is not a performance on our forecasting team or anything like that. These are, as a self-insured organization, there is going to be volatility. That's just the kind of the risk you take. And I think historically, certainly before 2022, we have not seen this kind of overages that we've seen in 23, in 24, and again in 25. So just for the number's sake, and keep me honest here, our budget in 23 was 6.7 million. We actually spent 7.7 million. In 24, our budget was 6.9 million. We spent 8.5 million. In 25, our budget was 7.7 million. I think we're estimated, I don't know that those numbers are totally in yet, to be about 9.9 million. So over time, from 22 to 23, a 13% increase. And these are claims, right? These are people who are leveraging the insurance that they have. So it's not anyone doing anything wrong. 13%, 22 to 23, 22% increase, 23 to 24, and a 27% increase, 24 to 25. This is not good news, in my view. And I think we know that healthcare costs are rising everywhere. Again, I tried to do as much research as I could to find out sort of what are self-funding institutions seeing. My research is seeing somewhere between 9 and 10%. Now, again, these are surveys. I don't know how they, but it's SHRM. This is from SHRM, which is a pretty well-established human resources organization. My point to all of this, to raise all this, is that I think the self-insured model works in stable years. And I think we are fortunate that we had a $4 million, I'll call it surplus, to fund this, right? And maybe this is more common than when I've been around. But I am concerned that those claims may not go down. I think the likelihood of those claims dropping is low. We've seen that the last 3 years. And we can't always rely on this general fund surplus. So I am going to ask staff for a few hours of work. I think they've already been on it, so I don't think it will be a start. But just to give us an analysis of what we're looking at, I think particularly I would, one, like to understand sort of how we forecast those numbers, right? What the methodology that's used for those budgets. And then what assumptions around any wellness design initiatives and things like that play into that. And I think also as important is, are there alternative structures that we should be considering, whether that's fully insured, part of the local government health plan pooling, those types of things what's available to us if anything makes sense. So just to be very clear, I'm not questioning our team's work. We don't get our AAA bond and our awards for financial management and all the things that they do without that. I know one or two people can swing our cost by quite a bit. So, but it doesn't change the fact that this trend seems to be continuing and actually has gotten worse the last year. So if we can take a look at that, we'll maybe in the future have a discussion about that. But I think it's important just to recognize at this time, as we're sort of shifting dollars over to it, understanding the why, and also that it may be something we want to consider looking at. So, but I support this. It's the right move, and I just wanted to raise that as something for, obviously, my fellow commissioners here and the residents to just have some understanding that we got to look at this, I think.
So staff does concur with everything Commissioner Gil Martin said. One of the reasons we do get those acknowledgements, AAA bond ratings and awards, is because of our long-range planning process where we take a critical look at trends and issues. We agree with Commissioner Gil Martin's assessment of what's going on here, and we've already started our work. We are building on the work we've done in the last two long-range plans. So we've been in a fortunate position to address those shortfalls in the health fund with transfers from the general fund, and we want to make sure we build a sustainable system where the health fund is healthy on its own in a sustainable manner. So you will see all that analysis that Commissioner Gil Martin talked about in the upcoming long-range plan update that we'll do probably June or July timeframe.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else? I'll just add some color commentary at the end. We're all thrilled to have budgets that are not in the red, and allow us to do a lot of good stuff. But one thing that feels a little disappointing to me in this, and again, I'm going to echo what Chris said, this is not a reflection on anybody on our staff or any decisions we've made in the past. But we had some opportunities, to create some alternative strategies for a window of time as it related to pension obligations. And it would be, nice. I guess I'm asking for rainbows and unicorns, but when we have situations where the economy performs really well, which is really what we're looking at a reflection of, to have that be usable in some more direct way for residents down the road. If that money, instead of covering over expenses in other funds, which needs to be done, but was available as, an additive to a pension smoothing fund, for instance. I was at a meeting not just last week with some other municipal colleagues, and there are municipalities that don't have property taxes because they have different economic environments. There are municipalities that give refunds. They're unique and they're odd, and they're certainly not the norm, and they're certainly not reflective of the structure of our entire community, right? But it does make you think, and so you can't help but sit and wonder, how nice would it be to have this money being dumped into a fund that was specifically designed to manage what we know is in front of us 4 years from now from a pension obligation standpoint. So thank you for the work you guys do, but as we have these conversations, I think it's just asking these kinds of questions, or at least highlighting what maybe could be, is sort of worth saying.
I'll just jump in and add a little addition to that. Part of our long-range plan in the past has been identifying our financial needs moving forward. They've been health fund. They've also been the pension funds that the mayor mentioned. And you'll recall that we actually did do exactly what the mayor's talking about a couple years ago when we established the pension stabilization assignment. So there will be opportunity to fine-tune these policies and practices going forward, and we'll be weighing the impacts of putting it towards health fund sustainability or smoothing and impacts of the levy for public pensions, public safety pensions. So all that will actually be on the long-range planning update as well in June and July.
Thank you. Any audience comments or questions on this? Okay, seeing none, we'll continue.
Thank you, Mayor. The last item on tonight's first reading agenda is consideration of a motion authorizing the execution of a contract with Sculpture Milwaukee for the selection and installation of public art in the Linda Kunze Plaza and 3 flexible amenity areas in the amount not to exceed $400,000. That's the consideration for tonight. But there's much more to this consideration that we've been working on for several years. In fact, as part of the 2025 to 2027 long-range plan, the Village Council identified develop a public art program as one of your priority action items. And this project consists of creating a public art program that addresses program management, the governance, funding, project selection, community engagement, as well as program evaluation, so an entire public art program. The initial phase of this project was identified as a village-operated program focused on installing art in Linda Kunze Plaza and selected downtown flexible amenity areas, which were just approved for construction earlier tonight. In November, the council established guiding principles to direct the art installation, and those principles are included in the agenda materials tonight. And then in February, just a couple months ago, the Village Council directed staff to issue a request for proposals for this initial phase of the project. We were able to issue that RFP in March, and we had great news. We had a tremendous response. We had 9 compliant proposals and 1 incomplete proposal. They were received from 3 firms that manage public art programs, 6 artists, and 1 local not-for-profit seeking the installation of a statue of a specific former Downers Grove resident. Staff duly considered all the proposals, and we actually interviewed 4 of the respondents. And from our analysis, we are recommending the execution of a contract with Sculpture Milwaukee. Since 2017, Sculpture Milwaukee has successfully presented more than 160 art pieces across 9 citywide exhibitions in their hometown of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They have demonstrated their proven model for selecting, installing, and promoting public art. And this is an important part. Part of their process is partnering with local, regional, and national artists, and they will consider any artist that we would put forth to them if we were selected and move forward with them. They also demonstrated a willingness and an ability to work with the community in public input sessions and stakeholder meetings as they work towards what they call a curation approach to public art. Staff is confident that Sculpture Milwaukee can deliver the 4 initial art installations in a manner consistent with the guiding principles and help the village establish an ongoing future public art program, should we so choose. John Rippenhoff, the executive director of Sculpture Milwaukee, is here to answer any questions you may have. Staff is also happy to answer any questions you may have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Any council comments or questions on this item? Leslie, go ahead.
Sure, I'll start us off. I am impressed with Sculpture Milwaukee, and I am supportive of this contract. I do think that we do not have any experience in-house creating a public art program, and I do think it will be incredibly beneficial to have somebody, and especially here in the Midwest, who has experience building a program, who is dedicated to working with our local artists and our local residents to have a determination for what it is, the types of things that we would like to see here. I think everything that they put in here, that they will be responsible for the selection, coordination, installation, maintenance, community visioning sessions, working with the artists, working with the community. I am pretty confident that this will be a positive experience. I'm gonna play the mom role now and say that I am a little bit disappointed in some of the reactions and the misinformation that has been out in the public. I think a great majority of us up here are very supportive of celebrating our Downers Grove resident. And we have all made comments up here and also with residents and one-on-one with each other that I in particular think that the North Plaza would be perfect for such a statue. It is a photo op type destination. It's got a great background with our history with Tivoli and a lot of other areas. And right now there's not currently anything there and it's visible from the train. We've all kind of had these conversations and are aware that that's going to be in the next round of planning, the budget for which, as we talk about our budgeting process, happens in November. So it will happen with this council. So it was incredibly disappointing for me after all of the conversations that we've had to see folks say, that it's not going to be a local artist. We don't know that yet. And that, you know, a sculpture of our local residents is done for. That's just not accurate. What we're saying is it's not, and we're not planning it for the Linda Kunze Plaza or the 3 flexible amenity areas, but we have a whole lot of other places to place art, and that north train station plaza is going to be the next one that we do. So I do ask, you know, we've had some interesting times lately. We've had some people very angry over our garbage contract, for example, and I would just respectfully ask everyone if we can please take a breath and take a beat before we kind of make these large pronouncements. Try and have these conversations one-on-one. We all want what's best for the community. We all want to move forward positively, but it doesn't help when inaccurate things are kind of circling. It just makes this whole process much more difficult, and it makes people distrustful of one another, and I don't want that to be the case. So I just wanted to state on the record that I think that Sculpture of Milwaukee will do a great job, but that I am also supportive in the next round of moving forward with our local resident statue in that North Train Plaza for many reasons, many of which I just stated, and happy to have that conversation further. But I think for some reason lately, folks have kind of just been up here, and I think we all just kind of need to take a breath and have some face-to-face conversations and trust that we all have the community's best interests at mind. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else? Martin?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. My comments are going to be similar, but I want to take a step back because when we started down this path for this program, which was, again, asked for in numerous planning documents and community input, we received a fair amount of criticism of who the heck are you to be picking art for the community? Why should these 7 people pick any art? So basically, any art we picked would be criticized as we're a bunch of knuckleheads that don't know what we're doing. So it reminded me of in business, I know others on the council will think of this, is when you need to buy some software for your organization. And you could go to the store or you can go online and you can scratch your head all day long and try to figure out what software to buy. But are you getting the right software? Have you vetted the software? Have you tested the software? How are you installing the software? Is it the software that's best for your organization? I don't know. I could buy it and then, again, be mocked as making a big mistake. Or, and I'm not always the biggest fan of consultants, but some organizations will instead of investing in a particular piece of software, they will invest in a consultant who specializes in the type of software necessary for a particular type of organization and its needs. And it will do things like bring its experience to the table of how do you select software? What software is best for you? Have you ever done that with a municipality before? Industry specific. Have you had experience helping with the installing and with interviewing the people within the organization to make sure that they understand what the software is? Will they be able to provide things like training? So to me, we are not under any circumstances, to highlight what Commissioner Stosky-Fugit said, choosing any artwork tonight. What we are choosing, and I think is very smart, and I'm glad that my colleagues, I believe, are all in support of this, and I thank staff for recommending it, is we are investing in a process because we were getting criticism about our process being flawed. And to choose something, anything, would have been a big mistake. This is a process we're investing in, and I think this is the right thing to do. I think it's the responsible thing to do. We're bringing in somebody who has experience doing this very type of program for other municipalities. This isn't just somebody who said, hey, I'm going to help you with the art program. They've done this for other municipalities very successfully and have laid out an entire process that they utilize that will engage the community rather than who happens to be yelling loudest in our ear at any given point in time, which is a lousy way to make a decision. So I think that this process is very smart. I think will ultimately be it will be very successful than us sort of making these ad hoc decisions. And how many spaces will we ultimately have available for public art? 33?
There's at least 36 planned in the
36?
Streetscapes plan.
Right, so this is the very first step, and I want to make sure we get this right, and we are going to learn from this, but we won't learn it in the dark by staring at a wall of software trying to figure out what we should buy when we don't really know. Instead, we're going to have a process that is going to be a broader process that will allow us to get the right types of art in the right types of places that the community can understand how we selected, and it wasn't just because of an email campaign, however well-intentioned. And I learned a phrase today about presuming good intention at all times. But this is something that will go on for some period of time. There will be many opportunities for public art in a variety of different places. So to suggest that we are making a decision, we're not making any decision tonight, but we're making a decision when this comes up for a vote, that we're choosing art, that's just not true. Nor is this the only opportunity. I also agree that, and by the way, I'm very supportive of our local resident statute and it being somewhere in the community. It's only a question of where and when. But I also am mindful of a person that came up during our refuge contract and berated us because he didn't like the way the conversation was going. And I simply thought to myself, that is not the way to win friends and influence people, particularly when they may already be on your side. It's just a question of when and where. I think Commissioner Sosky-Fugit's suggestion is a very good one. I don't know, I had something different in mind, but it's in an equally high visibility space and maybe a different time. And I don't want to get into this because we're getting ahead of ourselves, but we're talking about the Fairview focus area. I mean, there's lots of things that I think could lend themselves to very highly visible, very successful execution upon this concept. But that's not what we're talking about. We're not making that choice tonight. What we're talking about is investing in a process and essentially I'm thinking of it as sort of a consultant, where instead of buying something, I'm actually investing in someone who can help me make the right decision, not just today, but next time and next time and next time and next time. And I think that is a very smart thing to do. And frankly, it feels pretty good because for me to make a choice about this art or that art, rightfully criticized. So where this is, I think, much more of a community choice and we can all go off this together. And then what ultimately gets selected and where remains to be seen. So I just wanted to emphasize that as well. And plus, particularly the fact that there will be many more opportunities down the road. And this is very exciting, something the community has been asking for. And I think we owe it to ourselves to do it right in the right way. So that's what I have to say.
Anyone else?
Can I just real quick point out that Milwaukee does have a bronze statue of the Fonz. So Milwaukee is very familiar with these types of projects. Sorry. Thank you, Mayor.
No, good point.
The bronze bonds.
Yeah.
Rob?
Actually, what I'm hearing tonight is that staff listened to all of us and is bringing us this contract as a reaction to all of us saying the same thing, is that we don't feel qualified or comfortable making the decisions on what actually needs to be put into those 4 spaces. And what they're saying is, we understand how important this is. I mean, we've never had a public art program. And it's so important that we do this and we do this right and we get the ball rolling and we let it just snowball and get bigger. And I think what this contract represents is the best opportunity, after listening to us say that we don't feel qualified to make these decisions, to bring in somebody with a track record who's done it in Milwaukee, who has their bronze Fonz. And I'm totally in support of this contract, and I think this was the best idea on moving forward with these first 4 spaces. And I really do appreciate where you guys took this. But I think it really was you listening to us up here. And I think it's important also to realize that we need to stay focused on what we're doing. What we're doing is assigning the responsibility to help us put 4 pieces of artwork into 4 places. And something I'm hoping a bunch of people in here heard is how much support your group has from the people that are already up here. We see the value. Me personally, I think that our esteemed resident statue could be our bronze Fonz. But if we're doing it, I want to see us do it right. Just like starting the program. So that's it.
Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioners, all well put. I agree with everything that you've said. And I agree that Sculpture Milwaukee is, I mean, this is a perfect fit in my opinion. This is exactly what we couldn't have asked for, I think, a better situation. This is exactly what we needed. So, and I'm glad that you, Commissioner Rowe, complimented the staff too, because that's how we get here. And Commissioner Tully, this is a process, right? want to echo that. And thinking about the future and knowing that we have, so my math is right, 32 other possible places for sculptures. And thinking about this as a process, by having residents come forward and express a strong support for one of our favorite sons, it gets me thinking about others as well. Cami Granado, there are others too that through this process we may want to think about. And so it's good to have this engagement. And I can say this is one of those moments when I guess I'm glad I'm not on social media, because I'm totally oblivious to things that may have been said. So, but I echo what you said, Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit. We do need to be, kind to each other, and understand that this is a process, that this isn't the end. This is the first 4 of 36. And I think I mentioned the North Plaza last time, that I thought that would be an excellent spot for this statue that's being supported this evening by some of our residents. So anyhow, that's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Chris?
Thank you, Mayor. I too support Sculpture Milwaukee. I think they just have the most qualifications. You've all talked about that. 160 artworks over 9 citywide exhibitions, excuse me. They've got the experience. I too am encouraged by their process. They do a lot of work with the community, understanding stakeholders and residents' thoughts on these things. That's important to me. We did a lot of that with Guiding DG. I'm hoping there will be some similarity in that process, because I think it worked very well. The public input, which you've heard others say before tonight, is really important. I am encouraged by the passion of the local group that's here tonight, and I think community initiatives should have some passion behind them. I'm just going to talk a little straight to you. Please get your facts straight before you start putting stuff out on social media. This was not a no to that. This is a small part, as has been pointing out, to a large effort. I feel a little differently about this. Is a public art program. What the group is proposing is more of a pop culture recognition. Both of those have value, but I don't view these as the same. When you talk about numbers and the cost of this being 83% more, you're not comparing apples to apples. So we are showing, I think, you are seeing, I think, a council who is open. I would just encourage those who are pushing this to keep that in mind. And again, I recognize the passion. I love to see grassroots efforts on anything, really. It's just important that we try to keep the facts straight. I do think that I know that we set some design principles as a council, things like timeless, right? Welcoming, inclusive, all those things we agreed as a council for. Non-controversial, I think, was one of those. And not to say that the resident we're speaking about had controversy to him, but I think there is a number of principles that we're trying to adhere to. In my opinion, because it's been brought up and you guys have done a great job of getting this in the conversation, so kudos to that. I think that the place for something like this is in an area that we're trying to draw attention to. So that conversation we can have if this thing moves forward, but I love the passion. I am generally supportive of that, but for this, the art program and what we're trying to do, launch in 4, I would think, highly visible areas of our village. I think bringing in some experts is going to go a long way. So I look forward to supporting them when we vote on this. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I got a couple of comments to lay on you. don't have anything written down, I'm just kind of scribbling notes. So bear with me while I build a little bit of a clock. In 2009, I was elected to the village council. And in 2010, I started asking us to consider the idea of a public art program. Things sometimes take time. They take time to bring communities. And that sounds crazy, but as Chris mentioned tonight, these public amenity areas were 2 years in process. Our strategic plans are generally evolved and considered every 6+ years. So if somebody has a great idea about a bicycle safety plan, a transportation plan, it isn't going to be next year. It might not even be 5 years from now because it needs to be part of a bigger plan that brings the whole community. And so I've continued to raise that, and the timing became right for whatever reason. And I don't know what it was. It had nothing to do with me. It had to do with this group in this moment felt like this was a path worth going down. What is a public art program? What is it? There's probably 50 people here, so there's probably 150 versions of what maybe ought to be part of a public art program. I doubt it's one. There's 7 of us up here, so there's probably 35 versions of what ought to be public art. And that, frankly, was one of the problems, one of the challenges for us to get over. As a governing body for a decade, as a community over that same period, what is art? And where do you want to allow it? And what do you want it to look like? Because the fact is, everybody's got a different version. Chris calls something a pop art thing. Is that the same? Well, it depends on who you ask. So if you want to have something that is sustainable, that has community buy-in, that is scalable, that is going to last a long time, it needs to have a process. And so that this group, I'm so thankful, decided that process, trying to develop a process like that, was worth doing. And that's why this project was not find a place to put a statue. That wasn't the project. The project was develop a public art program to address program management, governance, funding, project selection, community engagement, and program evaluation, and also sustainability. How is this going to be something in 5 years? That's a big part of what's going on. And so anything we would do to try and fulfill that, to accomplish that project, is designed to try and bring the whole community along in a way that they can get behind, even though maybe it isn't their thing. That's a really big part of art. It's not just, I like this photograph, or I like this painting, or I like this statue, because I isn't the deal. It's 50,000 people governed by arguably 7 of us periodically changing heads. And so it's a lot more than a statue. And so we got down this project and we started down this road and we decided to do it. And then some folks said, I got an idea for a part of the program. And it was a wonderful idea, as would 50 other ideas be wonderful ideas. But nonetheless, what we're trying to develop is a program, not decide on whether we want a statue. And the thing is, I got to tell you, it's more than a little disappointing to sit up here and know that we've been really clear and open. We've had multiple conversations, as Leslie alluded to, both on and off dais, between lots of people that are sitting in this room right now. And when it became something that wasn't going to be exactly what somebody wanted, somebody thought this was a good idea. Leslie's being really nice, and Chris and Martin are being really nice, but this is BS. Somebody thought it was a good idea to go to the internet, which, Mike, you're lucky you're not on, and say, on Tuesday, keep in mind what I just said, because that's actually where we are, and everybody in this room knows it. Somebody thought it was a good idea to say, on Tuesday, the village will recommend to not build the greatest monument in all the land. Instead, they're putting up other art, not Randy. Also, they chose an out-of-town group from Milwaukee, not an April Fool's Day joke, that cost taxpayers $89,000 more than our proposal, 84% more. Don't scroll, take action, help. Well, you know what take action was? I'm appalled, short-sighted. You guys should get a life. Let's remember this at next election time. Nice work, guys. Way to build friends and influence people. A group up here is trying to build a program for the whole community for the long haul, and saying, frankly, about the Randy Macho Man statue, hey, cool idea. Maybe we should think about that. It might not be item number 1 on our list. That's it. Everybody in this room knows that. So I'm really, really confused and disappointed as to why that happened, because a program that addresses governance and funding and selection and community engagement is not going to be run by the most people that show up with a meeting with a sign or a wrestling belt. It's not going to be the most obnoxious social media presence. It's not going to be decided by the most likes. That's not a community program that lasts a decade and goes into 36 different sites across our community to try and bring art to the whole community. So I don't, I sounding like I'm frustrated, and I am, because I got a lot of personal investment in trying to get us to a point, and a group of people with a really good idea to try and help spur this thing on made a really bad decision about what they thought was going to be motivating to the community. And when you got 7 people up here working their tail off every single week, trying to find ways to bring things to the community, and you just heard about budgets and you heard about everything else that's on our table, we're always balancing things. Running to the internet and talking about what lousy folks these guys are because they didn't do exactly what you wanted in the moment, when you knew you were still part of the conversation, it's just bad judgment. So I'm excited about, I still remain excited because it sounds like the 7 of us are all wanting to continue this. And it sounds to me like Randy will be part of that conversation. It also sounds to me like Mike's got a whole list of ideas that he'll probably be part of the conversation as well.
And I'm honored, Mike. I'm honored. I'm not sure I'll accept it, but I'm
And
honored.
that's a really cool thing, because I
spot for you.
I remember I used to have a business in Joliet, and I went around Joliet periodically, and Joliet has these things which have kind of fallen in disrepair, but they're basically pedestals all over town, and on top of the pedestals are busts of people that are important to Joliet. And there's a bunch of them. I don't know the number. I've probably seen a dozen of them. But I think of something like that, and there are dozens of people. Randy's certainly a possibility. There are dozens of people, if we go back through our time and think about that, Downers Grove should be proud of and should represent in some way. And frankly, if others, whether they're new residents of Downers Grove, can learn from that, or they're visitors that can get excited about it, that's great. But if we really want it to be something that lasts and it is something more than right in this moment, it's got to be a process, and that's what we're doing tonight, as my colleagues have said very clearly. What I hope is everybody out there here in this room tonight, but also on the internet and trolling your favorite watering hole next week, I hope what you want to do is participate and not just try and poke people, because that participation will make this happen. Well, there's a lot of opportunity. I bet all the Randy people could probably come up with 4 or 5 more names right here tonight of people who would make some sense. If our idea was 36 sites over the next maybe decade of time to bring art and remembrance to Downers Grove, and that's what we're trying to do. So I've said enough. Thank you for your time. Man. All right, so we have,
I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I appreciate everything you said. I don't want to trivialize it. But it's my understanding that Sculpture Milwaukee did not do the bronze fonts. So just so we're setting the record straight, that they're not expecting that from Sculpture Milwaukee. Dave, am I correct? That was not part of their initiative. Somebody
That's correct.
keep me honest, yeah.
That's correct.
Not that it isn't great, and I've taken my picture back a couple times, but just so the record is straight, Sculpture Milwaukee did not curate that or pick that. So,
I appreciate the accuracy.
yeah, that's what I do, Mayor.
That's good. That helps us all. All right. Any other council comments? Any audience comments?
Hello, good evening. My name is Kevin Lark. I am a proud Downers Grove resident and the founder of the Macho Monument movement, as well as Local Legends DG. I appreciate the passion on your side and obviously on our side as well. I think more importantly, I appreciate the time, the consideration, and diligence that every single one of you guys has put into this process. The professionalism of this board, especially the village staff, has been demonstrated. And it should be clear to every single resident how committed each and every one of you guys are to this decision and the public art program here in Downers Grove. It's crystal clear. Folks have not been on our side responding to the RFP, doing the work and doing the research, and it is crystal clear. So thank you all for the commitment of this program that will build on the legacy of Downers Grove. We respect the process and we respect the responsibility that you all carry in this decision. The way the RFP was created and our interpretation of the RFP was that there are 4 available sites. And we appreciate the comments tonight. We appreciate the disappointment. We appreciate the feedback. And we also appreciate the clarification. I don't know who it was. I believe it was you, Commissioner Gilmartin, that made the analogy of a consultant who is creating a process. That was not our intention of our response. It was to specifically place a monument that we are all very passionate about and we have built a groundswell of. Full stop. More importantly, we want to be very clear, and as the guy who started this, I want to be very clear. Whatever direction this village goes with this decision or any others, we will continue the passionate support of this village, whatever it is, in a positive and pro Downers Grove mentality that we have taken this entire time. And this is not in response to these comments. This is in response to, quite frankly, a lot of work that we've done over the last 2 days to undo some of the comments that came our way and we shut down. There's a lot of debate that we've had on our team of what to do and how to do it right. We created Local Legends DG with 2 clear objectives. Number 1 is to build a public monument honoring Randy Poffo. Number 2, once that beautiful monument is complete, we plan to give back to the community that has shaped us by supporting local causes, uplifting unsung heroes, and recognizing individuals who have left this town better than they found it. With that in mind, we approached this RFP response with one goal: to build a proposal that didn't just reflect our vision, but aligned directly with every single one of your guiding principles. We're confident that we did that. It is okay if we weren't selected. Let me just say that again. It is okay that we were not selected. But along the way, our team has accomplished some things that we're incredibly proud of, and we believe that we can continue to build that momentum, including we recruited a world-renowned sculptor here in Downers Grove. We directly engaged the estate of Randy Poffo. We've gained their support and their commitment to create a temporary exhibit in the Downers Grove Library. We've also deepened our local roots. We've drove community engagement by creating a junior board at Downers Grove North directly at the response and some of the comments that we've heard in this very room. We've also engaged the business community. We've gone door to door to educate them on why we're doing this. And it is not some ridiculous stunt. We've gained wildly more approval and endorsements than we would have ever imagined. And finally, what I think is most interesting is we've unlocked a private donor network that is equally as passionate about this town, and that they would be willing to contribute their time, their energy, and capital. So I want to be clear, despite whatever discourse is out there or whatever feelings we all may have in this room, we've worked tirelessly on this effort and we've enjoyed every single moment of it. This is not our full-time job. But I think because more than anything, this has strengthened our bond with this community. Tonight's recommendation isn't the outcome that we had hoped for based on our interpretation of the RFP. But it doesn't change what we've built, and it absolutely doesn't change what's possible. We've created this energy, this movement. We have cookies that were Macho Man and Downers Grove themed. There's no way that there's no way I could have imagined that would have happened. Okay? Sorry. This will continue to grow. and we remain fully committed to bringing Randy's story to life here at home. So for us, this is definitely not an ending. It's a thank you, as well as a step forward in requesting future consideration. And I think more importantly, any and all discourse, if it was generated from us, despite our massive efforts to slow it down, I'd like to personally apologize, every single one of you. Because everything that I have seen throughout this entire process, as well as everybody on our board and our team, has been wildly impressed with how professional and how serious everyone is taking this. We do believe there's a real opportunity here, and it's not just for a monument, but we're hoping to partner with you guys. We want to make sure Randy's on the Mount Rushmore of Downers Grove. And we think there's an opportunity that benefits not just our interests, but more importantly, the community's interests, in the short term as well as in the long term. So thank you again for your time. I sincerely apologize for any beef that may or may not have happened, any miscommunication. I think more importantly, thank you for your leadership and your commitment to making this town that much better.
My name is Ian Ogden, and I love the idea of public art. I think it's a fantastic endeavor to undertake in this town. Obviously, I'm big into history around here because I'm on the board of the Downers Grove Historical Society. I'm also co-chair of the Friends of the Edwards House group. So I think there's plenty of historical figures that we have from this town that we could put up on statue form. Of course, I'm also a big fan of public arts, a big proponent in this town. And I think that definitely Randy deserves a statue because, to be honest, I do take issue with the calling it pop art just because for a lot of people, the Macho Man is why they know like this town. He pretty much put this place on the map for a generation of certain people. So I think that he deserves a place somewhere. I don't know where. I'm not going to try to tell you how to do your job. I think this is a fantastic thing to get someone who knows the process to start that off. But I think that this conversation should not end here. It should continue, and we should somehow find a way to honor this guy. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Andrea Micco. I've lived in Downers Grove my whole life. I graduated from DGN. I went to Whittier. I work at Parker's. I volunteer at Lyman Woods. I love this town. We own a home here. We're raising our family here, and I would never choose to do it anywhere else. My husband and I have traveled all over the country, going to a lot of towns like ours, almost exclusively smaller towns like ours, and we have a specific interest in public art. We love to see what people have to offer. We love to get to know a place based on its artwork. So I'm really excited that we're doing a public art program here. The places we really remember and love and go back to honor what makes their town special, that honors their unique history, teaches us something, connects us to a place that maybe we were never connected to before. So obviously I came with the Macho people. I'm not going to try to convince you why we need that statue. I feel like we're all pretty supportive of it, but I do just want to really iterate, as we're moving forward with the public art program, I would love to see it centered on what makes Downers Grove special. We all know Downers Grove is special. You have dedicated your careers because you know that Downers Grove is special. And I would just love to see that represented. I would hate to miss the opportunity to really represent Downers Grove's contributions to the world. Thank you. And there's lots of cookies if anyone wants cookies.
Anyone else? As I mentioned before this first reading portion, there will be more opportunities for these conversations, and please, everybody stay engaged and stay involved in the whole thing.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
I have your dispensation. Appreciate all that. Well said, Mr. Lark. I appreciate that. I appreciate the comments. I don't want to speak for the rest of my colleagues, but the other thing I want to just add to the perspective here is, yes, please do keep the momentum. Keep the momentum going. We encourage you to keep the momentum going, as Commissioner Gilmartin said. But sometimes there's a way to get someplace that may not be a direct line, and it's called getting to yes. And sometimes it takes a little time. And I think what you're hearing is that I'm not going to speak for everybody else, but there's a fair amount of people up here that would like to find a way to get to yes. May not be tonight, may not be tomorrow, may not be in the exact place, but ultimately it will be a yes that will make sense, and it will be, in hindsight, far more sustainable and supportable than if we had done something knee-jerk. There's a gentleman sitting over in the audience whose name is John Ladon. John Ladon will tell you about persistence when it comes to something that he's looking to do, and that it wasn't something that could be done immediately. It was about changing how certain properties in his neighborhood were reflected on the future land use map. Yep. And the initial thing was, he could have come up here and he could have rolled up a newspaper and said, "You SOBs, you need to change this now." Because that wasn't going to happen. But what he did here was, John, we'd like to work with you and eventually get to maybe not exactly what you want, but something that's going to be pretty close to what you want. And John's stuck with it. And you know what? It took a while. I don't know how long, John, it took. Year and a half. And I hope I'm not saying it's going to take a year and a half, but eventually that was done with unanimous support and no opposition. So sometimes if you work with the process, and I think that's what I'm hearing you wanting to do, and what we're encouraging to do, is that you're more likely to get to that, yeah, well, of course we're doing this. As opposed to all of a sudden now you've got the other group of emails that start to come in. And people with different views, and now it becomes a controversy. And what do we try to avoid? Controversy. So sometimes there's a way to get, what's that, I'm gonna ask Chris just because.
Oh boy.
What's that Rolling Stones line?
Can't always get what you want. Can't always get.
But if you try sometimes,
Get what you
just
need.
might find.
Get what you, I mean, tell me to bring my guitar next time. We'll go.
So, end of speech, but I don't want to hear our side, your side, because I think this is all something we're in together. So thank you for your words and your professionalism as well.
Chris?
Just last thing, I want to make sure I'm clear, and this has kind of been a night of corrections for me. I don't think I said a statue of pop art. I think I said a statue of pop culture.
You said pop art.
I did?
Yeah.
Bob said pop art. If I said pop art, that's not what I meant. We'll find out when we go back to the tape, which I will do.
And I was the one that mentioned the consultant.
But I just think there's a difference between pop art, which is an art form, and a statue of a popular culture.
Pop art is like lead.
Okay, that's all I got there. Thank you.
Anyone else?
That is our first reading tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Well, I'm not quite done, but okay, Village Manager Fielding.
sorry.
It's important that we get this right, and it's important that everybody leaves this room feeling like they should continue to stay engaged and that they see a path of engagement and participating in their village. And so I'm just going to say what, Kevin, you said something that I wrote down and I circled, which is not an ending. It's not. You heard it in 7 different ways up here, that there's a process we're trying to develop, and there's likely a way to be involved in that process. And what we're asking is that you partner with us and don't look for fights, okay? So now I'm done.
Thank you, Mayor.
Village Attorney Enza.
Thank you, Mayor. Only 2 items to present tonight. The first is an ordinance authorizing the extension of a special use ordinance number 6101 for 1254 Ogden Avenue to permit a drive-through. An ordinance providing for an amendment to ordinance 6062 in the Village of Downers Grove budget for fiscal year 2025. Both will be on next week's active agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Enza. Dave, back to you.
Thank you. We have one item on tonight's manager's report. It is the further discussion of the enhancement of engagement of boards and commissions. As the council knows, this is another council priority action item that's reflected in our current long-range plan. And in that document, there's a description of this important project. You see the 5 objectives that we're trying to achieve under this project here on the screen. They really focus on how we use our boards and commissions, how we engage them, the extent to which we do so, and also expanding recruiting efforts and strengthening the relationships between the council and those boards and commissions. We are approaching this project over a series of council meetings and council interactions. Back in February, we introduced the project, gave some background, and spent some time understanding our current operations, ranging from our key operating concepts to just actually how boards and commissions operate under the current system. Tonight, we want to turn our attention to three of the objectives that focus on how we use, how we refer items, and how we engage our boards and commissions in our long-range plan. As we go through in May and June, we'll focus on expanding recruitment efforts and the relationship building between the two entities. At the end of this, we'll implement whatever council direction is provided during that series of meetings. There are some concepts that are presented here tonight for each of the three objectives that we are discussing. They are based on what we heard from council members at the last discussion in February, but also on some individual council member meetings that we had at the staff table. So if things here look familiar, they should. These are concepts, the staff's interpretation of what we think we've heard from council members previously. The boards and commissions work as we turn our attention to their increased use and referring additional items to them. What we've heard so far is the board and commission's work could consist of a review of petitions that are filed for their consideration, which they already do under the current system. They could continue to work on items that are referred to them by the village council. And they could continue to, or actually expand on this topic, the idea of identifying issues and topics for council consideration. And they could play a formal role in our long-range plan, and we'll take a deeper dive on that later tonight. One thing the council talked about previously is what are effective referrals and when are we at our best as an organization? And we've decided that council referrals are most effective when it's a significant policy issue that would benefit from a thorough vetting and public input, a deeper dive, if you will. And where the council provides specific direction on the scope of the project, the deliverables you're looking for, and the schedule in which you'd like that undertaken. When we start talking about board and commission's identification of issues that should be on council's list for consideration, here's a couple of the key comments. The board and commissions could serve as antenna, channeling information that they've heard from members of the public and amongst themselves, and providing that information to the council. And perhaps these boards and commissions could convene at least once and maybe twice in a given year for this stated purpose. And that would be coupled with a reporting back of their work and the issue identification to the council on a regular basis. It's important to note that there would be no change in role of the council as the final decision maker in guiding the work. So the council would retain its role on deciding next steps, if any. This is a way to continue to do resource allocation in alignment with our long-range plan and other planning documents. We talked about the meeting schedule that may be required under the changed roles and use of the boards and commissions, where we would establish a minimum of 2 meetings per year. And then, of course, we would meet as petitions and agenda items warrant. But what we did find last time is that a lot of these boards end up meeting about quarterly. And perhaps that might be a good way to establish a shared expectation of how often they would meet. And then if they need to meet more frequently, build from that and meet monthly or more as necessary. If the council were to implement the directions and concepts that we're talking about here tonight, it would obviously result in achieving some of the stated goals and objectives. Additional agenda items for board and commission consideration, which then would lead to additional agenda items for our village council in your consideration. It would provide for that objective that was stated earlier of more board and commission input for the council. It would, by its very nature, increase the communication, and it would increase the predictability of the meeting schedule. The staff, of course, would continue to play its role as liaisons, and we would be working with these boards and commissions on preparing the agendas, preparing the minutes, preparing the staff reports, and whatever work product comes out of these boards and commissions would just be an increased staff time to support the revised process. It's important to note there would be no significant changes in roles and responsibilities, just the enhancement of achieving the objectives that were previously stated. As far as the ideas that we've heard for formalizing participation in the long-range plan, the first component here is to continue to refer priority action items to boards and commissions. It's important to note and take stock that the council has been doing this for many years. The most recent example is we've referred 3 or 4 priority action items for board and commission input already. The update to the zoning ordinance, the update to the subdivision code, that's currently being considered by our Planning and Zoning Commission. Also, conduct an attainable housing study and consider a solid waste contract. We've referred those for board and commission input, and I think moving forward, we will continue to do that. But as far as tying in the idea that the boards and commissions would help identify issues for council consideration, we could actually formalize that, and 1 or 2 of those meetings could be timed such that the identification of issues would serve as formal input to the long-range plan. And this would allow council to consider that input when you identify strategic goals, when you identify trends and issues, and even the priority action items themselves, you would have input from boards and commissions in doing so. And like I said, from a timing standpoint, we would just build this into our long-range planning schedule. We'd start a little bit earlier with the engagement of boards and commissions in this formalized fashion. Reports from the boards and commissions of their findings and recommendations would be presented at the first long-range planning meeting of each cycle. These are just starting points for further discussion of the council. We hope that you see that we've worked to reflect what we previously heard, but it by no means is trying to be an endpoint. We really want to hear from the council to get further direction. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone got a comment they want to start with? Leslie, go ahead.
Yeah, as I've been thinking about this, both with our former conversations and also kind of going through this PowerPoint, I'm trying to think about a schedule that might make sense. And I wonder if towards the end of the year is when the calendar year is when we do some of these updates. Like, it would be nice, and they might not have anything, but ask each of the boards and commissions if there has been either a trend or like a commonality that they've been seeing from residents throughout the year, so that we can be made aware of that. I think there probably are things with the Planning and Zoning Commission, for example, that have come up frequently in their meetings, and it would just be nice to hear if there's kind of a recurring theme in some of that resident input. And so for me, that's kind of the big part of what I would like to hear from them for maybe the end of the year. Then with regard to the long-range plan, I think it makes sense for us to start the long-range plan, but what I'm wondering is if once we get that feedback from them at the end of the year, that will likely help kind of guide us to see, is there something that we might want to address in priority action items or long-range planning? We have those early discussions, and then as we start to kind of funnel them, whittle them down, then engage the boards and commissions to see if there are any specific action items or considerations that we didn't have. So I think in terms of kind of hopefully that makes sense to my colleagues, of our timeline of at the end of the year, I think I'd like to hear some trends. Then, once we get the council seated, we kind of start some of those conversations based on what we heard, and then we might have those kind of directives and more specific things that we might want to guide the discussions for, with the specifics for a long-range plan and how we might achieve those priority action items. So as I was going through everything, that's kind of where my brain landed. So interested to hear what others have to say.
We generally have let's see if I'm following. We generally have kind of a 2-year cycle.
We do.
And so if you were intentionally reaching out to the boards and commissions at the beginning of the high priority action item long-range plan development, that's sort of in year 1, typically after new council seated, right? But then there's another point where we check in and say, what's done, what's not done, do we want to, is there anything we want to punt off the list? So kind of in prep for that, it would seem like one of the pieces of information maybe that we would be wanting to get in prep for that review point was this kind of feedback.
Absolutely.
Is that
Yes.
kind of what you're saying?
Yes, I would imagine that we would want to hear the feedback before we start the planning process, just to kind of get an idea and mull in our heads of the things that we're concerned with. But then, also during those updates, if there were maybe some unintended consequences to some of the things that we considered, if we're maybe hearing that from residents or boards. So yes, that's right.
Martin?
I'll try to be brief. Thank you for putting all this together. I think it captures a lot of what we talked about. And I just want to focus on two things. We have active involvement, there's passive involvement. Active involvement is where we actually direct, where staff recommends that we direct a board and commission to take something on. And that can be very successful for a number of reasons. I won't repeat it, it's in the materials. But it's great because there are opportunities for us to do more or to help staff do more by either using our boards and commissions as an extension in a responsible manner, or to get that deeper dive, and that's all great. And that I'm always in favor of that, and I think everybody is. On the passive side, so the active side is easy because we're up here basically saying, go forth and do this. On the passive side, I like getting the boards and commissions more involved early on in the long range plan and even the high priority action items, because it has the benefit of baking in with everything else, as opposed to just coming into the, hey, we gotta buy all red pens for the village council. Well, hold on a minute, how does that fit with anything else? Let's get this kind of baked into everything else. And I like the ability of staff to be part of that process and mold that. But it does get to us, but it gets to us in context. And then we can either say, well, yes, we're going to do that anyway, or, yeah, great idea, but that's number 56 on the list. Chris has 12 other things that are more important. Let's do those first. I keep picking on Chris tonight.
Okay, I deserve it.
But that's where I think we want to be careful about not soliciting too much input, because what I don't want to do is to make them feel like they have to send something to us.
Right.
You're going to have a meeting. This is your chance. Your one chance. You're going to tell village council what they got to do. Okay, we got to go with 12 things. Well, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Because we, especially in the last several years, have really packed the long range plan and the high priority action items with a lot of stuff. And what I don't want to see is things to get distracted from unnecessarily, but rather to do it from the ground up where it's part of the long range plan of the high priority action items, as opposed to something that gets thrown at us as, well, you told me to go meet and come up with ideas. I came up with all these ideas. Now you SLBs aren't doing them. Screw you. So much for your engagement. That's what I want to avoid, because that potentially can derail things that we're trying to get done. It can potentially add more burden to staff. But if you guys know how to, basically, I know you do. That's a rhetorical question. You know how to execute on what Leslie just said about how to bring that up from the beginning. But please, if we're going to have this check-in meeting, make sure that they know it's perfectly okay to say we're good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And not, no, I got to come up with 6 things or even 1 thing, otherwise I'm not doing my job.
Definitely.
That is not what we're trying to suggest.
Yeah, some context for that would make, you guys, Martin said it, you guys are not going to have any problem communicating this. But that meeting is generally exactly that. It's a check, right? So it's not really a, hey, do we want to change the list? It's, how's the list going? And is there anything that's really come up that is dramatic and needs attention? Most of the time, that ends up being everything's pretty much on track, and we found a couple of things that are potentially in the way. Usually the bulk of that content. So if that's understood, probably helps avoid that, right? This isn't really just a chance for new stuff to get thrown on the wall, because we decided the plan. We're at a point in that moment where, unless something got really easy, really fast, we're still working within whatever we thought our capacity was. Mike?
Yeah, I agree with what's been said, and I'm looking for, after having gone through 2 LRP processes now, one of the things that's just so difficult is looking at what those priorities are going to be and deciding because we have too many on the list, and how do we get to the number that we have the bandwidth to hire, to handle. And so, I think, Leslie, your comments about how they might at the end of the year provide some, provide 1 or 2 things that they're seeing, trends that they're seeing, right? And this is, I think you're speaking, rate to serve as an antenna, and it's possible that we could be getting some information from our boards and commissions that'll help us better decide just, so, yeah, they may be generating some new ideas, some things we weren't seeing, and we're certainly open to that. Don't want them to feel obligated to try to reach deep down to come up with a few things. We're looking truly for things that we're just not seeing, that resonate with our community. But I really am looking forward to, if I'm part of this process again, and if I'm not, even if I'm not looking to leave things better than the way I found them, having this as a tool to help inform that prioritization that we're doing, I think is a unique approach and something that we haven't thought about before. I'm sure I'm about to be corrected if I'm wrong, because there's some people here with some good history. But yeah, and then overall, looking just to respond to everything that's been proposed here, this sounds great to me. So I'm really supportive of what's being presented, and look forward to hearing other comments.
Anyone else?
So I'm going to take it a little different direction.
Please.
The one thing I appreciate about this proposal and everything that you said too is we're giving the boards and commissions time before we even go back to them. The reason why I think that's important is we've already made one big change. We've already implemented the liaisons. And I don't want to see us make any changes right now also because I want to see the cause and effect with this liaison appointment that we have too, and see what the end result is there, because maybe that's going to make a significant difference too with engaging the boards and commissions. But if we start making changes while that experiment's going on, I'd be worried that we wouldn't.
The library board's really the only one that.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So.
It's part of our boards and commissions.
So I was going to ask too, you're speaking really about the library.
Thanks.
Okay, all right.
So I just want to jump into the staff level here. The council definitely talked about the idea of liaisons at governance meetings, and it came up again in February 17th. We plan on talking further about that concept, which seems to have some amount of support, when we talk about in our May meeting, strengthening relationships that might play a role in there.
Just to clarify, we have liaisons to
External
governing bodies.
external bodies.
Library being a very unique one. We do not have liaisons to the planning commission or
Right.
to the liquor commission.
Correct.
That would be a significant extension, and we don't have that. Not that we used to have that once upon a time, but that's another conversation.
Chris, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think conceptually I'm on board with what is being said. I think the execution of it is going to be important and how we define that. I think if the idea is to have these boards provide us with some insight, and I would expand it, and I'm sure this wasn't your intent, beyond issues. If there's opportunities, if there's trends, call it the landscape of their discipline, whatever it is that board is responsible for. I think it's very important, and I agree that the idea that they come and talk to us once a year or twice a year is very important. I agree, and I'm not exactly sure where we're falling in timing, but I agree it should happen before we begin long-range planning. I think it would be great if it happened after the new council was seated, so the timing lines up with that, because then they're getting any new council members might be getting some information that might help them feed into their decision-making or their support of long-range planning items. I think it is a great idea to leverage these boards for some ideation, right? Not recommendations that we have to say yes or no to. Their ideas, their presenting the landscape of their discipline, in my mind, that allows us to think, okay, that sounds like an issue, or that sounds like an opportunity, we should discuss that. I think the other benefit of having them all present is there may be joined efforts or things that we might be able to link together. So we did, I think, quite a bit of that in our guide in DG, where we saw how certain initiatives actually touched multiple efforts, and I think that was that was useful. One of the things, though, that I've been thinking about is, and we touched on a little bit here about, well, if they don't have anything, they shouldn't come and feel like they have to make something up. And I see it a little differently. I think part of my ask for a board would be like, go find the things that we should be thinking about. It's on them in many ways as a member of that board to to provide us with some insight. And if they don't have anything specific, are there things that we should be thinking about in a broader sense? I think allowing it to be sort of, if you got something, bring it. Yeah, if not, no. We're going to fall right back into this, I think, pattern of, well, we'll wait for the council to tell us what to do. That's my opinion on that. One of the things that I was sort of thinking about this last week in the run-up to this is whether or not the plans and the guiding documents that we have can serve as their sort of baseline sort of ideas, right? So we have the comprehensive plan, which I think should likely touch every board as sort of a baseline. I mean, we use it all the time in our deliberations as well, and it's a formal part of our process in some ways. But I think it could also serve as an informal of like, hey, this is the vision as we've determined as a community, and how does your part tie back to this? That's a linkage I would like to see more of. Obviously, with the transportation and parking, we have the active transportation plan that would serve that as well. Environmental Concerns Committee has the ESP that they could use as a touchstone, but those I think are filled with ideas that we've come up with that could take 30 years, and maybe these boards can sort of help us look at those through the lens of 7 residents and what types of things they feel are help to prioritize. So they looked at. So to me, I feel like that's an opportunity. I don't know exactly how that would work, but there's something in my head there. But I think the annual briefings to us, or the biannual, whatever it is, are very, very important for engagement. I think it's going to connect us. It'll allow us to ask questions. It will allow us to even inform them on things that we're thinking about too. And it gives us a picture of, I think, what all the boards are working on. So I think it sounds like we're all saying similar things. To me, I am just not as interested as just letting them decide whether or not they have something to say. Like, we're asking them to commit to this board. We are looking for their feedback. We are asking them to be that antenna. And I think that's something that isn't an unreasonable ask. We could probably provide some guidelines on what that presentation might look like, or what we're asking for, or make it 3 items or whatever. We could provide some parameters. I feel like if we don't standardize it and we let it be open, I've said that enough already, but I think it will kind of fall to the side. So I don't know that this came up. I agree with what has been said in the past about not having sort of formal items presented to us. I don't think it should be that way. It should definitely be more ideation stuff and the way we would want to use it. I'm just going to throw this out there. I think we need to look at the boards and see which ones are still being used. I also thought of this morning as I was putting my notes together. The Environmental Concerns Committee, the name of that just sounds so negative. I would love to turn it into something a little more positive. Yes. So maybe we can agree on that. A small thing, but just it feels like there's a bunch of people worried, and maybe there are. But yeah, we were worried, but maybe we could talk about it in a different light. I tend to be more focused, or want language to be more focused on the positive. Yeah.
It's not the economic concerns.
That's a different one.
I think we've had this conversation.
Yeah. So I think, but other than that, I I am pleased, since this was a collection of all of our thoughts, my thoughts are reflected in here, and it sounds like we're kind of on the same page, so that's good. It's just getting down to the brass tacks on that, so. I think that's all I have to say for now, Mayor. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just as long as we don't mess with the EDC and it's a GUST liaison, that is the one thing we cannot do.
I would just put a statue up, there'll be no problem with that. I'm so happy, thank you. Have you, nice of you.
I don't, I guess one thing I want us to just all think about and see if I can find a good way of saying it without offending board and commission members. Does anybody up here feel like we're short on stuff to do?
No.
No.
Okay, so it's a little bit tongue in cheek and a little bit wise guy, but my fear in all of this is just there is no shortage of stuff village government could do, none. And so I just want to work really hard at managing expectations. I worry a lot about that. Write us, give us a list of ideas, and then we're not even going to do any of them. If you look at that high priority action item list that we run every year, I'm probably overstating it, but if there's 10 things on the high priority action item list every year for the last 10 years, of those 10 things every year, there's probably 4 that are really discretionary and generated from ideas. An enormous number of those things year in and year out for the last forever are things that we have to do, and they're big enough that they're going to consume such a piece of our resources that we put them in that slot. Every year we have to go from 30, or every time we do that exercise, we go from 30 or 40 ideas to 10 or 12. I don't really want to go from 150 ideas to 10 or 12, because I'm not going to go from 150 ideas to 60. There's still I say I don't mean I, obviously I mean we, but I don't want to present the impression to people that if you got a good idea, we're going to do it. Because if you got a good idea, we're going to maybe think about whether or not it's something we want to consider. That's really what we're going to do. So I just, it doesn't inform any of this necessarily, but I just want us to not lose sight of that piece of it. I like the stuff that's here, and I think if we had a more intentional and deliberate way of engaging, we'd get 2 things. We'd get some feedback that was more helpful, and we'd also get some folks who were more excited and enthused about being participants because they had an idea of what that really meant. Those are both good outcomes from this, but I don't want to be soliciting just blanket packages of ideas.
Yeah, so for me, I guess that kind of isn't the expectation of the type of feedback I would be expecting to get. I guess I would be expecting to get kind of more, the boards and commissions are really the ones that are kind of in the weeds and seeing a lot of, again, the trends of what community seems to be coming to them with. And so I was seeing it more as maybe some of those trends might inform how we approach some of our priority action items, or it could be that we know that this thing is on the horizon, or it's even something that staff addressed, but we might not have thought of an XYZ point about it. And so it might kind of inform the process by which we have these long-range planning discussions. I was kind of thinking about it more at that level rather than, I want to tell you to do this priority action item. I was thinking of it more as, okay, transportation and parking folks are hearing that, this particular, I don't know, like drive-throughs or something, right, are a concern, or something small. And so we might start to think about, okay, as we're thinking about our priority action items and our planning, what are some of those things that might go into that? But I don't know if it's necessarily a priority action item itself. I think it's more of how we approach the business that we're going to be doing moving forward is kind of what I'm hoping for. And so I'm hoping that if maybe we can level set those expectations, that please don't inundate us with 10 priority action items, but rather tell us kind of the pulse of the community and data points and what we're seeing. That might help inform where we prioritize things and how we approach things.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I think it's a big part of it is going to be level setting.
They're also
expectation setting.
so different though, right? Parking and
Correct.
traffic is one that is gonna be in that mode because they're sort of always engaged and connected, and so is zoning.
Environmental. And,
But and environmental maybe a little bit, but then, like stormwater, right? I mean, they're hearing from a lot of people about a specific stormwater thing. No, they're not. They're just not. So there's a liquor commission. There's a liquor commission hearing what what is the liquor commission hearing that we're not hearing?
Okay, but, okay.
I mean, come on.
Okay, those are two boards. I would say the technology board, right? There is 100 things that trends and ideas and data points
Yeah.
that they could provide. And I
That's
wanna
why
make-
I'm separating them, Chris, because they're very different. But technology is a good one. I
Right.
mean, reconstituted and so if nothing else, what is going on in the world? But
that is why I think
but
it's
they're
important
all the
Petition
boards.
and non-petition.
But all the boards are not all the same, and the petition non-petition thing is a starting point. But I think to Chris's point, the technology commission is not going to get a petition, right? So, but they still could be in the role that I think we're talking
So
about.
then
They've got a
maybe-
lot of stuff
I
they add.
wouldn't exclude them. I'm saying you just have to approach it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
We categorize these boards a little differently in a way that
Mm-hmm.
we don't have the same expectations from the stormwater
Yeah.
board as
Right.
we do from the technology commission or the environmental sustainability commission, the ESC. But I want to be
Somebody write
clear-
that down.
I want to be clear that when I say like bring 2 or 3 things to us, I think I agree. I'm not interested in building yet another list for us to start to pare down. But I do think it's important to understand landscape, trend, things that are
Putting things in
how
context.
things are what's happening, perhaps here in other places, so that we can have some context to these things when we are putting our list together.
Doesn't that require an assignment from us?
Yeah. But the assignment isn't give us 5 priority action items for us to consider and then we'll have 25 more. It's help us understand what's happening in the world of technology as it pertains to municipalities. And let that committee come back with, okay, this is what we're seeing in security, in AI, in logistics, whatever it may be. That technology presentation might be just thoughts and ideas and what 5 other communities or how they're using technology. I mean,
I get it. I'm not arguing
Yeah, I
about the
know.
data. What I'm arguing is whether this is the right tool for that, because just keep pulling that thread. I
Yeah.
think that's a good example of information that we probably could use more of.
yeah.
Right. But what's that really mean? And what I mean by that is, doesn't that really mean that our staff's going to go do that? I mean, we're going to. How does that not just effectively a staff report?
Well, someone just said, are we looking for a list of things to do? The staff has a lot of other
Right.
things. I think I'm teasing you, but part of the effort of this was to try to share some of that load. And even if it is just in the early stages of understanding what's possible, I don't know. To me, you made a great point that I hadn't thought of, but the engagement level of these boards, I think you're going to see go way up.
Yeah, well, probably because they got excited about whatever they're doing now.
Right. And that I think is important.
Right, like, so one example that I can think of, like, say the ECC, which hopefully, one day will be the ESC. But, say maybe when they're having a lot of conversations or they're interacting with, whether it be Green or Grove or whatnot, maybe we're hearing like rumblings of issues with, streetlights and projecting too much into, people's yards or whatever. Well, that kind of aligns with our dark sky things, and so that might be able to inform some of the things that we're doing and some of the improvements that we might want to make. It might not necessarily be a priority action item to replace all streetlights, but it is something that we kind of want to keep in mind when we're thinking about what we're going to be doing and prioritizing for the next year. So it wouldn't necessarily be a priority action item, but rather it would be, okay, we're hearing a lot about this, so maybe it's something we want to think about when we're doing the XYZ.
And I would just say, while I think there's value in that, my thought of this was that it was much higher level, that it wasn't like so much direct feedback of operational or on the ground things.
I think eventually
it's a board level discussion of where is technology and municipalities meeting.
And I think that level is going to be different depending on which board you're going to have as well.
Sure.
And eventually it would be great to get there, but I think we're probably gonna have to take baby steps to get there. Just to make sure that the workload is.
I would be more worried if
balanced.
the idea is to, and I'm not saying there isn't value in this, Leslie. I just would be more worried that if it was a street light issue, that all of a sudden, yes, that's something I would expect something to be done about. When it's a little more high level, I feel like it's more visioning. It's more sort of 1, 2, 3 year plan instead of,
So then it does kind of feel like them coming to us with priority action items because those are 2-year plans.
No, it's not plans. To me, it's more, it's been said, data points or trends, things like that we can glean off of. Yeah.
And I do think it'll depend, like we said, by commission too.
Sure. Absolutely.
Tammy?
I hate to be rude, but can we talk about this a little more later? I've lost focus and my back is screaming. I really can't even pay attention to the discussion anymore. I'm sorry. I'm in agony.
You want to excuse yourself?
Yeah, really?
Yes.
I am in
absolutely.
agony.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Don't get old, people. Don't get old. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Thank you.
But, I see what you're saying. And I do think that, like, again, your technology commission makes sense because it's just reconvened and things are rapidly changing.
Yeah, but okay, I use that one because that's easy example.
It is easy. It's very
do say
easy.
that. But I think the Environmental Concerns Commission, I think TAP, I think, Plan Commission, like, I know they got a lot of work to do, but
So when Leslie talks about,
affordable housing, we just,
Well, we are
I
using
know,
them for
like,
that.
but that's an example.
but
of-
that's a specific assignment, right?
Mm-hmm.
When
That's-
Leslie
that's the
talks
active
about
part.
sort of these feedback loops about what's going on, that makes some sense to me. What doesn't make some sense to me is thinking that at some 30,000 foot level, the ECC is going to come up with something. What did we hire Jason for? We got actual professionals for these things. Planning thing. We're going to have 7 volunteers or whatever the number is today on that board that are going to somehow be alert to something that we need to be thinking about that Dan and Jason and his team didn't pick up on and weren't connected with all their professional peers on. Technology is very, very different than all the other boards because the other boards are fully constituted and really pretty
I'm sure we
mature.
have a director of technology who isn't being named that could probably be very smart and think of all these things too.
Right.
I'm just,
Right, but staff hasn't been, because it's so new, our staff has been engaging with those boards as a matter of course for years. And many of those boards have people who have been there a while. That's very different than that. Yes, there's clearly.
Yeah.
But they're gonna get rolling and get to a point, and then they're gonna be at a point where it's like, you just hope somebody heard something.
Mayor,
Yeah, go ahead.
just point of order. Where are we going with this conversation?
So where we're going with this, I think that's a good question. I think what I'm hearing is everybody's generally nodding at this, thinking this was a good capture of our last conversation. And the question is, as it gets developed a little further into actual actions, what might those look like? And I don't know that we're all as aligned as we should be on that.
No, but I think we're starting to talk in some circles because I have a pretty clear understanding of what you're advocating for, Chris, and I'm in agreement with and understand what you're saying as well. And I understand the concern that we have maybe some guardrails and manage expectations because we don't want to be empowering folks to come up with lots of ideas and then for us to deal with the fallout of not addressing any of them or some of them, but not others? And how does that all weigh out? So, I mean, I think it's a legitimate concern. It's going to need to be managed. So I've heard what I think what there is to hear on this.
It's
anxious
more
to
than that, Mike.
move forward now because it's getting late.
Mike, it's
Well,
more than
Mike's
that.
clear. Thanks, everybody.
Well, yeah, but maybe not, Mike, because I think there's more than that.
Okay.
The boards, Martin talked about petition driven. Martin talked about petition driven, and as one started differentiator in how they operate. That's certainly a good starting point. But their day in and day out in existing interaction with the public and our team is another one, because some of them are very mature and very, I think, more already, despite our efforts to further engage them, in touch. Environmental concerns, traffic and zoning are the three that come to mind. So it probably is the kind of thing where before we got much further on this, we'd have to maybe spend a little time further defining what those boards are or are not.
Well,
That's kind of the
so
next step.
might also just throw a little wrench into all this as well. I mean, all of these commissions and boards have a staff liaison. So there's I don't want there to be a total presumption here that some of the things that we're talking about in terms of this antenna stuff isn't already happening. I think our staff is, hearing what's being discussed at the boards and commissions, and when they hear something happen, trends and things. So I don't want to leave everybody with the impression that there isn't already some of this happening, right? And that if we don't move forward with this in an aggressive way, we're going to be missing out on something here. So we're looking to amplify and dig a little deeper, I think, with this. So
As we try and decide if we're done for tonight, which we probably are close to being, what is it that you're thinking next steps are, Dave?
So we will continue down the path of the multi-meeting approach. I think in May, we'll go on to expanded recruitment efforts and strengthening relationships. The reason I think it's important to do that is I think when we get back together in June, some of these concepts are so interrelated that we might want to take the next two bullet points and then take a step back and piece this together. For example, who's on the boards is going to have a lot to do, in the recruitment efforts is going to have a lot to do with the role that we ask them to do. If they're doing environmental scans for us, or if they're doing something else, may plan. So we'd like the opportunity to hear a little bit more in May about the next two bullet points. And then frankly, we'll have to regroup and see what we can put on the table for council consideration and see if we've captured what the council's looking for.
Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think one of the things we also looked at was sort of the mission statements of each of these boards, right? So those were, I think, drafted under the operational structure of the council tells you what to work on and then you come back to us. Maybe in an effort to sort of backwards design some of this, it might be worth looking at those and what do we want each of these boards to do?
Yeah.
And maybe not from a specific standpoint, but what is the mission of each of these
I can
boards?
get behind that for sure.
Because I don't know, looking at them, they sound fine and they're intentionally, I think, broad, but.
Well, and again, that's going to be dependent on the board, because some of them are statutorily defined.
Right.
Some of them are our creations.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a handful of boards we're really talking about here, right? It's not
Probably.
every
Yes.
single board.
Correct.
Nope.
That's right.
So, or it's maybe we start with those that we feel this engagement will have the most impact on. Technology, environmental, maybe TAP,
Planning and zoning.
I don't know, community events. I don't know, I'll throw that into the soup.
Like a brick.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else for tonight?
My brain's dead.
Guys that stuck with it, thank you.
Yeah.
This is how it's made. It's not always glamour and ribbon
What kind of
cuttings.
statues do you want?
There's only one thing left to say, Mayor, and that is we all need to congratulate Commissioner Davenport and wish him best luck on running the Boston Marathon on Monday.
Is that that's
And-
Monday?
and
It's Monday,
Yes,
yeah.
and he'll be
Thank
wearing
you.
a shirt, of course, that says just 72 days until Rotary Grove Fest.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Appreciate it.
All right, we are going to wrap the manager report, Dave,
Thank you.
and we'll try to move through the balance of this. Are there any council member reports, Mike?
Yes, I just want to point out that our friend and colleague to some of you on the council, Rich Culvaney, is being honored as a Historian of the Year. And there's Jim Toth documentary film coming up about Tomlinson Holman. And so Rich is going to be recognized and awarded at just before the movie at the Tivoli on April 29th from 6 to 9 p.m. So I hope people will go online, go to the Historical Society's website and purchase some tickets and come and join us, because I plan on being there. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Rob?
No report.
Leslie?
I just want to say that I appreciate kind of the conversation that was had between both the public and the council. I think it's really important when we can kind of have these moments and call them out as really positive interactions. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And also I'm looking forward to seeing everyone at Passport to Dining tomorrow. That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Just congratulations, Rich. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes,
Martin.
well deserved.
Good luck on Monday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
It's all been said. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good night.